Welcome back, Axis and Allies players, straight from the nest. It's Wars of the World, Series 3, the Napoleonic Wars. NATO's going to lead us through this introduction and through all of our scenarios. Take it away, NATO, and show us how it's done.
Hello everybody, this is Nato at the Nest with the first half of the 1805 turn of the Napoleonic Wars. Now before I get into the turn of what each nation did, I did have to make an adjustment to the game because of balance issues. The previous videos, Austria and Prussia have been able to purchase units and been able to build up this entire time. Well, I took that away and put them back to their setup numbers because Austria and Prussia combined with Russia had something close to like 30 infantry, and it was gonna just swamp France. And France wouldn't have stood a chance, any chance at all. It was, there's potential battles where France would have, 3 infantry, a cannon, and a cavalry versus, 11 infantry on one side, and then eight units on versus 4 French units, and France would have just got overwhelmed by sheer numbers in just a couple turns. So like I said, I tweaked the numbers a little. I put Austria and Prussia back to their starting numbers and setup, and took away their excess for balance issues, and so changed the rules to that Austria and Prussia can't purchase units till they're at war as well, so France doesn't just get overwhelmed by sheer numbers, and gives France a chance. And that's the only tweak I had to make. I was going to say something else, but it has slipped my mind. Alright, so I guess we'll just get into the turn. So England had its first sort of naval victory of the campaign. Spain attacked 2 British frigates with 2 frigates of their own, and they managed to destroy each other. So it's not quite a victory, but it's the best outcome England's had so far navally against Spain. And for their tech roll, for their infantry score, they rolled a 4. So now they're sitting at 57. So they need 57 more points to get infantry squares. Austria, now in the war, it went south and invaded northern Italy and actually took it from France. And then it moved its force in Sudetenland down to cover its capital, Austria. Then Spain bought more frigates, moved its forces, more army units to the Portuguese border, and then just moved its existing frigates up to C-Zone 24, so that way it's in a good position to go either the west side or east side of England to counter any new British frigates that they try to put out. See, Russia just moved now that they're in the war, Russia can finally move into Allied territory. So Russia moved into Sudetenland to cover its Austrian ally right flank, and then moved into western Poland to get closer to the Prussian front once it enters the war. Prussia, with the new tweaked rule, didn't do anything. And remember, I reduced them back down to their starting units set up for balance issues, so France has a chance it doesn't get swamped. Austria, it loaded up its transports and landed its forces in western Poland, and Sweden also bought a frigate to help out the British in their fight against the Spanish and French fleets. So that will definitely be a big help to England. And France was busy. France came down and attacked a British frigate in the Straits of Gibraltar and successfully sunk it. And then France attacked Rome, northern Italy, and the Sudetenland. And the attack on Rome went well. Caused three casualties to the Italians for 2 of their own. And then attacked the Sudetenland and caused 1 casualty for no losses of their own. And then attacked the Russian forces in Sudetenland. That one didn't go so well for France. They inflicted 1 loss on the Russians for 2 of their own losses. So a lot more action. Then Portugal just bought another guy, another infantry, to get ready for Spain. And we'll see how that goes if I have to nerf Portugal as well, but I don't think it will be too much of an issue, because the way that the naval fight's been going is probably going to be pretty standard, so Portugal is going to have to be fighting Spain all on its own without any British help for a while, until England can regain naval dominance, or at least superiority. So beefed up Portugal is probably good balance-wise, but we'll see how that plays out once Portugal enters, and we'll see if we have to tweak the setup or rules or not. Because remember, this has not been play tested before, so this is a raw run. First time the rules have been tested in an actual game scenario. So expect potential rule changes and setup changes, because this is not set in stone by any means. So this is a dry run to see if this works. So, and then America hasn't done anything, and Italy just bought another infantry to try to hold on. So now that Austria, Russia, and Sweden are in the war, let's see see what strategies have changed. England, they're probably not going to change much in strategy. Probably just still going to focus on naval action and trying to fight the Spanish and French fleet. But it's got some serious help now. Russia, with Russia now in the war and a production in the 40s, Russia was able to lend lease 10 IPP to England. So that means that England can now build 3 frigates per turn and finally match Spain for ship production. And so England's just going to, and I'm thinking that will be standard move for Russia, every turn is to give England at least $10 every turn, so England can put out at least 3 frigates per turn, because that's what Spain can do. So England can finally match ship for ship Spanish production. Granted, they still have an uphill battle, because as you can see, Spain still has quite a fleet sitting right there. And then with Sweden, probably going to, from this point on, probably just going to be putting out frigates, because Austria and Russia can handle the land war, and Sweden can switch to frigate production to help out England. Let's see. Austria, they went south to hit northern Italy. The reasoning behind that was with France still fighting in Italy, that presented an opportunity to cut off reinforcements to Rome. And so now the French prospects of taking Rome and annexing all of Italy are that much harder, because that 1 infantry and 2 cannon, that's all France has. And so that was the main reason why Austria decided to go south and take northern Italy, because it cuts off French reinforcements and it takes a factory away from France. And then in order to do that, Austria had to pull its forces from its capital. So in order to make sure its capital was covered, it had to abandon the Sudetenland to do that. But luckily, Austria has an ally, Russia, and coordinating with Russia, Russia stepped in to cover the Sudetenland on Austria's behalf, and also to protect Austria's flank. And so that worked out quite well. Austria has cut off French reinforcements to Rome, and Russia has successfully held the Sudetenland from the French invasion, and so Austria's right flank is secure. And the rest of Russia's forces are just waiting on Prussia's border, waiting for Prussia to get into the war. So those forces right there, when Prussia enters the war, Russia is going to move forward and secure Stettin for Prussia, and to make sure Berlin can't be outflanked. And so that's the general strategy for the Allies right now. For France and Spain, strategy-wise, I don't think it's really going to change. France is still going to do the land fighting, while Spain does the naval fighting. Because those Spanish ground units are going to be needed in Spain, because eventually Portugal is going to enter, so on England's side, so those Spanish troops are going to be needed to fight Portugal. And then if England ever gets naval supremacy and is able to have clear access to land troops anywhere, if you remember a couple videos ago where I outlined England's victory objectives, 8 out of 10 of their possible points are all in the peninsula, in the Iberian Peninsula. So the second England has a realistic chance of landing troops in Spain, they're going to do it. So, and the best way for Spain to prevent that is ships. So if England can't get naval superiority, then England can't land, and if England can't land, England can't get its victory points and England loses. So the best way of doing that is a wall of ships. So that, at least to me, logically, that's would be Spain's priority and course for the war is just pump out ships, which works for France because that frees up France from having to spend money on expensive ships and just can concentrate on the land war. And that's about it for the turn. So we'll come back with the second half of 1805 and see what new happens. See you then. Hello everybody, this is Nato at the Nest with the second half of the 1805 turn in the Napoleonic Wars. And I finally remembered what I was going to mention last video, and it's actually something that I was supposed to mention at the very beginning, but I've managed to forget every single time so far. So, without further ado, the thing that I forgot to mention at the start of the Napoleonic Wars is this is what we're calling our first keystone scenario. And what we mean by keystone is if a certain faction wins the scenario, that's it. You just stop. You don't go on to the next scenario. Because in our interpretation, or the interpretation that we chose to follow, because there's 100 different possible outcomes and variations to one side winning or losing, and how that changes everything down the road. So it's impossible to 100% say this is what would happen if Napoleon won or not. So take it with a grain of salt, but the path that we decided to choose is if France wins this, if Napoleon wins the Napoleonic Wars, then France would retain Spain, Italy, Austria, and Prussia, and there might still be an independent England, and there might still be an independent Russia. So we're going with that scenario. So if France wins this, there's no Italy, there's no Germany, there's no Austro-Hungarian Empire, and without those powers, World War I doesn't happen. We could speculate that World War I still could have happened. It would just be like England and Russia versus a super powerful France or something like that, but at least for now, we're just going to go with if France wins, it's just a clean cut stop, and that's it, and you can start over or just continue on just to see what would happen. I guess something we could do is if you want to see like a potential World War I scenario where it's a super France versus England and Russia and maybe eventually America or something, we could develop that. So let us know in the comments if that's something you'd like to see. Possible Napoleon wins and we have a super France into the 1900s. So let us know if that's something you'd want us to develop, but for now we're just going to go with France wins this scenario, it's done, it's a clear cut. Obviously if that does come to pass in this scenario, will still continue, the rest of the scenarios, because we have scenarios planned all the way up to, a hypothetical World War III, sometime in the 2050s ish. So, if France wins this, we won't just stop. We'll acknowledge France's victory, but then we'll just pretend France lost so we can continue the scenarios. And another thing, in the unit and pieces list that Viper did, one thing we didn't mention is this scenario also uses the Croatia overlay from historicalboardgaming.com for the Croatia, Hungary, and Slovakia. It pretty much breaks up Yugoslavia, adds Croatia and Serbia. And what's that place called? Slovenia. It breaks Yugoslavia and adds those three territories. So for this scenario, you use the overlay mostly for the Croatia, breaking up Yugoslavia and adding Croatia there. And I think other than that, that's all the announcement stuff, so we can just get into the turn. England fought 9 Spanish frigates with only 3 of their own. They lost their 3 frigates, but they took 3 Spanish frigates with them, so it was a 3-for-3 loss. And it seems kind of ridiculous right now. Why is England even bothering? Because every ship it puts out, it just instantly loses them. But it's reason why England's continuing to buy ships is it's planning for the future. Because in 1808, France annexes Spain, and we'll get into the point details of why that happens, why France does that when it happens. But the key thing to know right now is when France annexes Spain, Spanish production right now is 34, and so when France annexes Spain, that 34 goes away. And now France will be responsible for fighting the land war and a naval war. And although France will get the entire Iberian Peninsula, minus Portugal, the entire productional value of the Iberian Peninsula combined is a whopping 2. So France will get all that territory, it now has to defend, and it'll only go up $2 in production. And so France, that's currently sitting at 28 production, it'll only go up to 30. And so France will have $30 to spend on fighting a massive land war and having to fight a naval war. So what that translates into is what that translates it into is France no longer having a separate ally that can concentrate solely on ships. That means French ship production is going to drop dramatically. And so now England will actually be able to outproduce France ship-wise. So the reason why it's continuing, and when France annexes Spain, all these Spanish units in Spain and all the Spanish ships just turn into French. So the reason why England is continuing to build ships, even though it loses them, the very next turn, is it's keeping Spanish ship numbers down. It's losing every ship it puts out, but it's still taking 1, 2, or 3 Spanish ships with them. So it's keeping the Spanish ships from becoming stupidly overwhelming because those ships will turn into French ships. So it's, in the long term, it's keeping the French ships manageable. So then when England can start outproducing ships, instead of having to sink, 25, 30 built up Spanish / French ships, it will only have to, overcome and outpace, 9 or 10. So that's why England is continuing to pump out ships, even though it's losing them right away. It's a long-term strategy. They're losing in the immediate, but long-term, when France annexes Spain, and that means French faction total production drops by half, and that will allow England to outproduce France in ships because France also will still have large land commitments. So that's why England, bought those 3 frigates, and it lost them right away, but it took 3 Spanish frigates with them. So it was a tactical defeat, but the long-term strategic goal was kind of a victory for England. So moving on, Austria, it attacked the French forces in northern Italy, and it was inconclusive. I don't exactly remember the casualty rates, but it didn't really do much damage to France. And production-wise, it just built up its army in its capital, Austria. Spain built 3 more frigates, continuing the strategy of just focusing on the navy and keeping the British occupied off of France's back, which they've been hugely successful so far in this war. Russia attacked the French in the Sudetenland, and they almost drove the French out of the Sudetenland. They reduced the French down to a single infantry, and that was their only attack, and just moving the rest of its stuff west and preparing for when Prussia enters to take over responsibility for Stettin. It's at war now, so Russia can start putting out Cossacks, so that's what those chips represent, the Russian unique cavalry. They cost 5 to put out, but it's cavalry that has a +1 attack and defense. So that will be quite useful for Russia once they can get them into the fight. They have to come from a long ways away, so it'll be a couple turns before they get to the front. Prussia didn't do anything with the new rules that I talked about last video. Sweden, continuing the strategy of helping England navally, built another frigate, and one thing I didn't mention last video is Sweden's production is at 7 normally, but Russia, now in the war and a clear line of communication to Sweden, is able to lend lease. So Russia is kind of the allied bank right now. It has the highest production of any allied nation. It's 46. So it's leasing to England, Austria, and Sweden. And so with that extra money from Russia, Sweden has enough money annually to build transports now. So it built another built another frigate. And the frigate it built last term, they moved it out into the Atlantic to support the British Navy. And France, the big news with France is Rome has fallen. So France has annexed the rest of Italy, and Napoleon has been crowned King of Italy. And that has thrown Austria's original purpose for going south, to cut off reinforcements to Rome, and in the hopes of Italy being able to hold off the French, has more or less turned into a useless campaign. France rolled really well, had 3 units, all 3 units hit. Yeah, all 3 units hit, and Italy got only 1 hit in return. So that's a big win for France, because now it has gained another factory and can reinforce the North Italy front much quicker than it having to come all the way from Paris. And so that French army right there, and what's left of that French army, can now combine to drive the Austrians out of northern Italy. And if you remember, one of the French unique units is the Imperial Guard. That's what that purple chip signifies. And if you remember, whenever France takes a territory from an enemy, any infantry that were involved in that battle get to roll to have a chance to become Imperial Guard. 1 to 3 become Imperial Guard, 4 to 6 don't. And France had 1 infantry that survived, and they rolled for their Imperial Guard and they got a 2. So that is France's first Imperial Guard unit. And if you remember from the intro video, they're elite infantry. They have a +1 attack and defense. So it's an infantry that hits out of 2. So that's really good for France. Certainly going to need the help, because they're facing a lot of enemies right now. It's France's faction. It's 2 nations versus 2 nations versus 4 nations. So they can definitely need all the help they can get. Oh, and England rolled for their tech roll, and they rolled poorly, and they only got a 1. France rolled for their tech roll, and they got a 2, I believe. So pretty poor rolls on tech. Portugal just bought more troops. And that was the end of the turn, with Italy knocked out. So they've been removed from the board. So 1 less nation to go through. So that was the end of the turn. That was the end of 1805, with Italy falling and France gaining the entire Italian peninsula and Croatia. And a predicted setback for the Allies, but setback nonetheless. So we'll come back with 1806 and a new year to the war. We'll see you then.
Hey, thanks for watching Axis and Allies players. Don't forget to hit a squat on that like button. If you'd like to see more videos just like this, go ahead and click on our subscribe button. You can view all of our other videos on our playlists right here on Viper and NATO, straight from the nest, coming at you from historical board games, Z-Man Games, Parker Brothers, Hasbro, and Wizards of the Coast. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you on the next round.